Hello, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, and we're here for another great DevOps.com webinar. Been looking forward to this webinar for a while now, since we first signed it up and announced it and started putting it together. Joined by three great guests today. We're going to get into that in a second. But today's webinar is Scaling Cloud Infrastructure for Millions of Devices. So how do you support millions of devices on your cloud infrastructure? It's a problem, believe it or not, that many companies face, and it's part of the 5C series that we're doing as sponsored by our friends at NClouds. Before we jump into that, though, let me just take a quick moment in case anyone is new to our webinars and go over with you. We use the GoToWebinar control panel, and it affords us some nice features for our audience. Number one, we've set aside time for questions. It's really important. My opinion is a good, successful webinar has great questions. So rather than waiting to ask your questions at the end of the webinar, though, we'd like you to use the questions section of the control panel, and you could type your questions in there in real time. You don't have to worry about forgetting them or whether they're relevant or not. They're in there. We have them. We'll ask them if we can at all possible. And even if for some reason we don't get to them, we do have a record, and we could ask our webinar guests to answer them maybe by writing after the fact if we had that many. Also, you'll notice down at the bottom the chat section. For our webinars, we use the chat section for technical issues. Maybe the slides aren't progressing or you can't hear the audio well. If so, we do have engineers standing by, and if you type it into the chat section, we'll be happy to try to help you as best we can. Let me answer the first question. I already answered it earlier. Someone asked, is this webinar being recorded? Yes, absolutely. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on YouTube TV, or DevOps TV, our YouTube channel, as well as via DevOps.com. You can get it from there. With that out of the way, then, let's jump in. So as I was saying earlier, this is part of our 5Cs series that we've been doing with NClouds and AWS, and we're going to talk about 5Cs that change the future, right? CI, continuous integration, CD, continuous delivery, containers, cloud, and culture. Today we're talking about cloud, but as you can see here, the CI, CD, containers, and culture, you can get a replay of that, again, on DevOps.com or on our DevOps TV YouTube channel. Today is the Ndimensional one, and then on February 27th, we'll wrap it up with cloud migration and culture. So please save the dates, bring your team, we'll go from there. All right, that being said, let me introduce you to what I think is a great panel. And we're going to go right to left as you're looking at the screen here today. First of all, CEO and co-founder, friend of mine, JT Geary of NClouds. JT, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Alan. Thanks for having us here.
Thanks, and it's a pleasure to have you back. Joining JT is the man in the middle, Doug Cleish, Solutions Architect for AWS. Doug, welcome to another DevOps.com webinar.
Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. You did a great job last time. I'm sure you'll do great. And then, last but certainly not least, is the newcomer to our panel, the rookie, Dr. Rakesh Chalasani, a VP Technology for Ndimensional. Rakesh, I didn't mess that up too bad, did I?
No, you did not. Thanks for the introduction.
Okay. Thank you. All right, gentlemen. So, scaling cloud infrastructure to millions of devices. Let's take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. Once again, we are very excited to be doing these 5C series with you. Our goal is to really bring forward some of our learnings and experiences, so hopefully other companies find that information useful. I'm particularly excited about today's webinar with Ndimensional. Ndimensional being one of our clients, we've been working with them for almost a year now. And it's very exciting to see their business grow and also see their AWS infrastructure evolve on the cloud. And we are really excited to be part of that journey. Rakesh, I think that this will be a great time to tell people about Ndimensional. I know you guys are doing some amazing things. What do you guys are about, and what does the infrastructure looks like on AWS?
Sure, JD. Thanks for that. So Ndimensional, we are a artificial intelligence company. We have almost 3 decades of experience now building machine learning applications for industrial scale challenges. We provide a platform as a service, which I will get in more details later on, but we are one of the few end-to-end platforms right now that focuses on operationalizing machine learning in real-time production settings. When we mean real-time production settings, we mean the data coming into your system is a continuous process, and the decisions being made is a continuous part of your business. And that scenario applies to a lot of use cases, as we found. Some of our clients have monitoring and diagnostic centers where we're detecting anomalies, we're determining the root causes of the issues that they're facing. We work with credit card fraud detections, optimizing fuel efficiencies, and all these things fall into the line of 24-hour systems where the data keeps flowing into the system and decisions are made continuously. And this is where we excel as a platform as a service. So how do we do that? We do that in pretty typical production. So let me begin by a typical production setting. This is how most use cases would be, where you have data coming from industries. That could be your sensor readings, your inventories, the data coming from a variety of different sources. And you also have data coming from other sources like the internet. And this could be your weather data, your Twitter feeds, your click-through rates that you're getting from your web page, so on and so forth. So typically we want to combine these data coming from these different sources, put it through a fire hose, create a data stream so that it's a continuous process and the data gets updated as soon as you get it, and you put it into a data lake. And the data lake is there for your long-term storage. And that's something that's a consistent infrastructure that you would see in many different places. But what ND provides in particular on top of it, and we also provide the data lake, but once you have the data in the data lake, is you will be able to discover and build models on it using the data that's in the data lake. And discovery, when we mean discovery, that means that you're going and plotting, creating visuals, creating dashboards, so that you get more up-to-date information and detect some patterns. But even more interesting is when you actually build machine learning models for detecting anomalies, for figuring out patterns in the data that might be more useful to you. And while model building in itself is a very challenging task and it's a very important part of building a smart applications, what's more important is to actually taking that model and putting that into production. That means that taking that model and applying that as fast as you can on the data streams itself. So what we provide is what we call streaming analytics. So streaming analytics is a way Ndimensional provides applying those models onto the data stream itself. And this opens up a whole bunch of possibilities. You can tap into the streaming analytics now, and you can actually do advise and control signals. And advise and control signals, so the advisory signals could be detecting a particular event, figuring out a particular anomaly that you might have got, or a particular event that might have occurred and you're asking someone to react to it. Even better is when you take the data that's coming in the streaming analytics and pass it on as a control signal, in which case the signal that you're passing is actually controlling the process that's generating the data, like balancing the inventory automatically, and so on and so forth. And this will create some sort of a closed loop scenario where the industry is now controlled by a powerful streaming analytics, and that's a continuous process. And another important part, which is often overlooked, is that the models that you're building are not exactly going to be static. They're always going to go they're going to get, you need to keep on retuning them so that as the data characteristics change, you'll be able to change the model itself. That's what we call adapt and optimize. And that adapt and optimize itself comes from the data lake itself. So as you collect more data, as you understand the characteristics of the data, and you see that the characteristics of the data changes, you want to continuously adapt the model that you're building, and you're making choices for every time in the streaming analytics to come up with the most optimal next step. As you can see, there are plenty of different parts in this, and Ndimensional's platform automates a significant part of it. In spite of that, we do think that we have to work with the customers, and that's what we do. We closely work with our customers to identify their problem and come up with the right framework. Can you go to the next slide, please? So these are the solution frameworks, which we typically are a general set of solutions that we put forward, and we can easily replicate it across different application domains, like monitoring to figure out, to detect anomalies and particular events that might occur in the data. We have diagnostics, that is, once you actually detect something, you would actually want to identify what is the operating event and classify it into some predetermined classes so that you can react to it when some particular event has occurred. You can also forecast it. That means that you're trying to estimate if a particular event is going to occur at any given point or not. You can go a step further, and you can actually predict what might happen in the future so that you can be more proactive about the decisions you're making. And you can also have dashboards built in our platform where you're continuously monitoring the key performance indices. These are usually a discovery phase. You're trying to plot diagrams, you're using some sort of machine learning to extract some pattern out of it, and that all helps you to kind of provide an advice to a strategic decision making. And finally, but not least, the optimization, where you have a closed loop control, where you're trying to actually, at every step, you're trying to get to a particular business objective within an operating constraints. So imagine that to be a portfolio optimization and things like that, where it's a closed loop system and the data keeps coming and you're trying to achieve a particular business objective. So with these frameworks, and once we have a customer, we work with them to identify the framework, we actually take this framework and build it into our platform. And that's where we provide a platform as a service. Our platform is right now a full stack platform, that means that you can build visualizations, you can do advanced analytics, you can do machine learning, and once you build all these things, you can actually take these things and build an entire end-to-end application itself as a part of the platform. And the platform itself is code-free environment, so it's natural, intuitive, and concise. So you don't have to be a coding wizard to actually do any part of it. So most of the things are automated for you, and they're easy to deploy into production setting. And as we said, the platform itself is cloud-based. That means it's enterprise-grade. It's right out of the box. There is really no need for installations. You just pay-as-you-go model. What we have as a part of the cloud infrastructure is connectors, so that data from different sources can be ingested into our platform. And as the data gets ingested, they are put into our data lake, and our data lake is our long-term storage. And on top of the data lake, we have a directory which kind of manages the data that's in the data lake, organizes it so that there's some governance on the top of the data lakes. And that's very important to many enterprise customers. And on top of the directory, we have a cluster, which is the one that's doing all the heavy lifting, that is doing the streaming analytics, providing you the visuals. And all this cloud infrastructure is accessible through two different ways. One is our web portal, where you have all self-service tools to build the visualizations and machine learning models. And it's also available through the APIs, so that you can make this platform part of your application itself. So I think that's a pretty good introduction of our platform. But we took this platform into production in mid-2016, and as I said, it's completely cloud native. So we based off most of our infrastructure in AWS, and we started off pushing data into this system, which is a 24-hour system. We started with a few thousand sensors data coming into us, and by the late 2016, our customer size to increase, and we now have hundreds and thousands of sensors coming in. So that sudden increase in the amount of data that's flowing in caused a few challenges, and those challenges are, if you go to the next slide, please. The first and foremost is the stability. As we said, it's a 24-hour system, pretty critical applications, and decisions are made continuously. So the data must be current. There can't be a data latency in the computation of the analytics. So an anomaly detected and an hour later after the event has occurred is of little less value than if you detect it as soon as possible. So latency is very important, and as we're building machine learning models, and that will be true for a lot of people, is that there's a burst of activity coming into the cluster, so you need compute resources to be scalable, scaling up and down depending on what sort of machine learning models you're doing and how often you're trying to update those models. And another important part of our thing, as we continuously try to roll new features into our platform, and given this is a 24-hour system, we cannot have a lot of downtime when we're updating the system. And that's at the end of 2016, our downtimes are sometimes even more than 5 to 6 hours, and that's a pretty significant challenge that we had. And we also have security issues as data comes from different places, from different industries. We have with different compliance requirements, so we have data governance and access issues regarding the security. And last but not least, we have monitoring, and we do not have a proper 24/7 monitoring system, so there's really no knowing when the system goes down so that we can automate a response to such failures. So it is at this point when we started to actually work with NClouds, and we started to work with them to figure out some solution to these challenges that we have. The first thing that we did, I think, is to migrate from our existing pipelines, which we wrote in Ansible, into a Chef. And what that provided us is that it allowed us to use many of the existing AWS infrastructure like CloudFormation and OpsWorks, and that allowed us to automate almost all of our pipelines. So the build process, the redeployments are now part of an automated pipelines. So the two things that really came out of that transformation. One is that now using OpsWorks, we can do an auto scaling of our cluster without actually having any downtime. We also be able to roll out our features a lot more efficiently. That is, we automated the build process, separated it from redeployment so that it becomes a background process. You don't really have to bring down our cluster while we do the build process. We streamlined the deployment process, so we have now a blue-green deployments. So we are moving from one feature, we're moving from an old to a newer release almost with no downtime. We also made great strides in security aspect. We built VPN and VPCs. We have separated our production from the rest of the development environment so that there's a lot more security, and we also did a lot of compliance. At this point, I would like to get JD in, because JD is the man behind all the architecture, and can get into more details about the security and the final solution we came about.
Yeah, absolutely, Rakesh. So this is sort of a typical infrastructure that we recommend for our clients. And most of the companies like ND are in this phase where they were experimenting with things on the cloud, and now everything takes off. Now, then there comes the opportunity where you're ready to build the infrastructure following best practices. So in this architecture, you can see that we are building separate VPCs for different environments. For example, Jenkins and OpenVPN goes into like a utility VPC, and we build a separate VPC for production environment, and that provides tremendous amount of security. As Rakesh mentioned, we also leverage OpsWorks, especially for ND. It worked out really well because we can create different layers based on the server roles. And it just makes the automation easy, and it integrates really well with CloudFormation. So and auto scaling becomes much easier. and which was one of the big requirements for Ndimensional, where they wanted to grow as they continue to bring more data from more sensors. OpenVPN is something we leverage for companies that size of ND, because most of the companies, some companies maybe don't want to have site-to-site tunnel. They just want to have something where they can install the client on their laptop and they can connect to production servers, and it provides that extra layer of security. And we heavily leverage VPC pairing to connect all these different VPCs to provide extra layer of security. And we're actually very excited about that VPC pairing, the global VPC pairing AWS announced at reInvent. And can we move to the next slide, please? And these are some of the tools we leverage in addition to AWS resources. AWS services, we also leverage Chef, and that integrates really well with OpsWorks. And for our managed service providers, we leverage Datadog. It helps us to provide anomaly detection. So as Rakesh was saying, it's very important for them to detect issues before it even happens. So we leverage Datadog for our managed service solutions to detect those kind of issues beforehand. And obviously Jenkins, and I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with that. With Jenkins, we heavily leverage Jenkins to build automated deployment pipelines. So things like blue-green deployments can be easily orchestrated with Jenkins by integrating with OpsWorks. So the customer even doesn't know when we are deploying the new code, and it just brings better stability and automation to the infrastructure. These are some of the AWS services we leverage for Ndimensional, and I know Rakesh went over some of these, but I think it would be a great idea to have Doug chime in on some of these services, especially like Amazon DynamoDB, and how the customers are leveraging these services on cloud.
Yeah, thanks, JT. And one of the great parts about being SA at Amazon is being able to work with all these different services that we release, as well as what our partners release. And one thing that I don't know if we covered, I'm actually a partner solutions architect here at AWS, so I focus on a lot of our partner products, helping them deliver the best solutions possible to our end customers. And as everybody's seen and knows, we have a very large portfolio of products and services these days. However, there are some areas that we really haven't had a chance to delve into, or our partners have been working on for years and years, and they do a lot better than us. So the integrations that NClouds does using other partner products like Chef, Datadog, and Jenkins really help give that whole extra holistic approach to the customer engagement. And without partners like all of them and NClouds, we wouldn't really be able to serve the customers as great as we can. But with that, the services listed here, for those that haven't used them before, AWS CloudFormation is for a guy like me that has been running servers for years across multiple data centers, is really a tool that makes everything shine, where I'd write bash scripts that would do things like set up a server, change different environments, connect firewall rules to things. And CloudFormation basically is the ability to run all of your infrastructure as code. It can deploy almost any AWS service into any configuration that you want. There are ways to integrate with external services, things like that, and basically just write a JSON file that's able to run and build all of your services and maintain them. You modify the CloudFormation template, it can modify everything on demand. It keeps track of what was launched, what needs to be destroyed. If you launch 100 instances, 4 databases, and a VPC with CloudFormation, and you decide you don't want it anymore, you tear down the stack and all of it comes down with it. So it's a really great way to script and manage your infrastructure for building out massive things and doing it in a cookie-cutter fashion. And DynamoDB is a great product that we've used internally across Amazon for years, and our partners are starting to see a lot of great use out of, being our NoSQL implementation. It's cloud scale NoSQL, and allows our customers to basically jump out of the box, not have to worry about managing a NoSQL cluster, figuring out how to deploy, how to scale, how to use things like that. With some of our new introductions, it allows you to run in a global fashion, which is really great. Very redundant, very high performance, very high scale. Moving on to EC2, I mean, everybody out there's heard of EC2 at this point. It was one of the first building block services to launch. back in, what, 2006. But these days there's so many different instance types out there that honestly even us at AWS have trouble keeping track of them and have to go to the instance type page every once in a while to make sure that we're recommending the appropriate instance. But anything from memory optimized instances to compute optimized, network optimized, storage optimized instances, up to our giant X series instances now for running huge data warehouse implementations, things like SAP HANA, things like that. It's very difficult to find a compute requirement that we're unable to meet these days in EC2. And with some of the recent releases around being able to move reserved instances around easier, share them between accounts, things like that, it's really turned the on-demand EC2 instance into a larger, more plannable infrastructure as well, with being able to plan your costs out and get those discounts in there for reserved instances without having to worry too much about what happens if I need to change instances later. With Amazon Elasticsearch Service being our managed version of Elasticsearch, one of the big things there is, you know, the managed part of it. Our goal at AWS is generally to try to reduce the amount of infrastructure work that our customers are having to do and let them focus on their businesses. So just like, you know, a lot of time is wasted across the enterprise of running hardware, making sure the hardware's up, making sure all that infrastructure to keep hardware up, whether it's electricity or HVAC, etc. You're wasting a lot of time not focusing on your end business. And so with Elasticsearch as a service, we handle all the infrastructure that runs it. You don't have to deal with launching EC2 instances, installing Elasticsearch, configuring it, scaling it, repairing instances when they go down. We handle that all for you as a service, so you can sit back, install your Elasticsearch, hand it off to your dev teams, basically watch it scale on its own and not have to worry about it as much and be able to focus on those either more fun or more interesting or more profitable endeavors that your business has going on. And that kind of leads into the OpsWorks as well. As JT said, it works very well with Chef. It uses Chef recipes, Chef cookbooks. It's our infrastructure management tool. And once again, it's a fully managed service that integrates well with all the different AWS services. So you can concentrate on actually writing the Chef recipes, running your infrastructure, and not really worry as much about actually running the Chef infrastructure and things like that. The kind of big boy on this list is Amazon S3. Once again, it's a building block service like EC2 that's existed for quite a while, and most of our services are built on top of it in some way, shape, or form. But S3 at this point, with storage starting at 3 cents a gig per month, and when I say starting at, I don't mean it like when a housing development puts up a sign that says starting at, where it means that's the minimum. S3 pricing only goes down from there generally. So when you're storing petabytes of data on S3, and you're using things like infrequently access storage, things like that with a lifecycle policy to push things back into different storage tiers, you can really get the cost down and easily manage petabytes of data that you're not having to handle tons of storage sitting in a basement somewhere or in a data center somewhere that you're dealing with failing disks all the time, things like that. It's object-based storage, so it makes it easy for your developers to program to use into it from a web interface. They're not having to deal with block level, things like that. The different services these days coming in with AWS Glue and Athena that allow different ways to get data in and out of there, to index that data, visualize that data. It's becoming more and more of a great product.
Yeah. Thank you so much for those details. I totally agree. You know, Amazon continues to build products and make it easy for customers to build on top of AWS, and so you can deliver greater experiences to your customers. And you know, this is what we try to do well at NClouds, where we combine what AWS offers and combine it with open source tools like Chef and sometimes commercial tools like Datadog to build a solution where you as a customer could deliver better value to your customers. Rakesh, I think it would be a great time to maybe speak about what kind of results you guys have gotten from all the investment you guys put in on the infrastructure from last year.
Sure, JD. So taking up this project added great value to us. Particularly, there's a huge cultural change within the company. For us, now that NClouds provides us with a 24/7 monitoring and support system, we have much better response towards our customers. There's a streamlined communication between us and the customers now. At this point, for any major issues that might come up in our infrastructure, we're maintaining an SLA of 15 minutes. It's great, and it's pretty responsive. So that also allows us to, because NClouds engineers are the ones maintaining and responding to customers, and maintains a particular catalog of the events that are happening in infrastructure. Our engineering team gets a great insight about the stability and the functionality of what we have rolled out. And that gives them a lot of focus on what to work next and what's the new features that we can roll out in the coming releases. So that's a huge cultural change for us. And on top of that, we were able to accelerate our innovation cycle because our redeployments are now happening in less than 30 minutes rather than hours that it used to take. We were able to push new releases more often, as frequently as weekly or bi-weekly in some ways, in some places. So our customers are getting a much better, newer features more often now. We also address the issue of scalability. As I said, there's a burst of activities, and that's true for many machine learning models. We're going to have, time and again, a burst of activities, and our infrastructure has to scale. And again, we're able to scale within minutes rather than an hours that it used to take. So that provided us a great value and saved a lot of money on the resources part of it as well. The other part, most important thing, is the security aspect of it. The great thing about it is that we made the security as part of the automation itself, so we don't have to really rationalize about it anymore, and we're able to follow some of the industry best practices in terms of security, and also took care of some of the compliance requirements that we have. So that's the gist of what the results we got. And we're not done yet, and we are trying to go to the next phase of it. So what we want to do in the next phase is that we want to improve our scalability. As you could see, we are using multiple different services on our infrastructure. We want to make sure that each of the services have an auto-scaling and make it as much automated as possible. We also want to make some architectural changes. We want to go to a hybrid infrastructure. That's a demand that's coming from many of our customers. On top of the public cloud support that we already have, we want to support having multiple private clouds and on-prem. And this is work that's ongoing right now as we speak. And the next thing that's also ongoing is our data processing. We're working on re-architecting our ways to actually now support sub-second data processing from where we are, and also means that some of the infrastructure that we have built needs some re-architecting. And we're working with NClouds to make sure that whatever new architecture we're building is, again, scalable and stable enough.
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking forward to collaborate with you on that, Rakesh, and especially I think we were speaking about it the other day, the new services that AWS announced on VPC pairing and global DynamoDB tables. Yep. That's really going to help us to some of the initiatives you guys are trying to pursue of like regional infrastructures.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of where the new global tables are going to become very attractive for us, when we have multiple private and on-prem infrastructure along with the public cloud that we have.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to touch on this slide, or Rakesh, you covered it?
I think I covered everything on this one so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing the information, and I'm sure a lot of companies who are going through similar pain of growing infrastructure on the cloud could relate to that. You know, at NClouds we partner with a lot of companies like ND. They grow on the cloud, and sometimes it's hard to handle 24/7 support and at the same time develop features. Our goal is to really take care of some of the heavy lifting, whether that be taking care of the on-call support or re-architecting the infrastructure, so our customer can focus on delivering better value to your customer. So I want to wish you guys best of luck for 2018 to continue the growth, and we are excited to be working with you, and we'll be there to help you support through this scalability and infrastructure build out. With that, let me hand it back to Alan for Q&A.
Great, thank you, JT, and thanks to the whole panel. That was an interesting bit of a dive here, as well as getting some scoop on Amazon and AWS and recent new products and offerings. Always good. So let's jump into some questions. We have plenty of time actually for 4 questions left. Our first question was from Brian Schumacher, and it was earlier on. He wants to know what data connectors were available. And JT, I think it might have been when you were presenting.
Data connector, this might be a question for Rakesh.
For Doug? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, our data connectors right now, we offer connectors that's connecting to standard SQL libraries, SQL databases. We also are working with some of the, we're working towards actually connecting many sources like HANA, and also different file formats that might be stored, like whether it's in your existing Hadoop clusters or other private S3 clouds like Parquet or Avro. So that's what we are working on. We're also working on towards coming up with streaming data structures that might be available as well. So it could be your data might be coming through Kinesis or some other data source that is already there. We want to connect to that as well.
Excellent. Doug, while I got you on, though, we got another question here for you, and that is, how can you do performance benchmarking of infrastructure in AWS with millions of devices?
Yeah, I mean, that's always kind of a fun thing, because a lot of it kind of depends on the infrastructure that you're using and what you're designing for, what it is. With most of the time, we're seeing it's with front-end web applications that people are using that are going to be distributed directly to users. Large websites, an example would be someone like Netflix, where they're really unsure of when they launch how many users are going to jump right in and use that, and they're trying to benchmark something from the front end all the way down and get that user experience. From the AWS perspective, we have some service offerings that will kind of help move along that, but there's a lot of programming and scripting involved from the customer end, and that's where a lot of partner solutions would come in. And in this solution that we're talking about today, I'm not too aware, and JT can interrupt me if there was one specifically that was used, but we see tons of partners that are out there using things like Dynatrace and the likes to do end-user load testing across millions of users that they may be built on top of AWS as well, so they're able to scale up a giant fleet to simulate millions of users and run against it. They may use systems like our mobile device service, where they're able to simulate and run from multiple cell phone devices or iPads, different mobile devices to test, as well as just regular scripted computers. But a lot of it comes down to looking at a specific use case and determining what the best way is to load test against it, and figure out generally what partner products would be best to fully simulate a real user environment.
Got it. Excellent. You know what? I've got a question here for Rakesh, if possible. So, Rakesh, interested in Ndimensional's platform. There's so much machine learning AI that we're hearing, different platforms. What sets apart Ndimensional's versus some of the others?
Yeah, so there are many machine learning platforms at this point. They're providing part of the thing which is touch base on is to build new machine learning models, which is a small part, as we discussed in this. Operationalizing those models means that you have to maintain infrastructure, which is a major part of what we talked about. Is we need to have a lot of infrastructure, and that's what Ndimensional really excels at. We not only provide the ways to build a model, but we also are providing the infrastructure and operationalizing this machine learning models in some real-time data settings.
Excellent. Doug, another one here for you. DynamoDB. Does DynamoDB support auto scaling? or do you still have to provision that throughout beforehand?
What a wonderful question. As of earlier this year, DynamoDB does support autoscaling, which is a great release from that service team. Jeff Barr actually did a great blog post on it back when the release came out back in June. That's available on our AWS blog. But basically, at this point, we introduced autoscaling for DynamoDB that automates all the capacity control. So you can basically set the desired target utilization that you want and provide the upper and lower bounds that you want, and the DynamoDB system will actually monitor the throughput, which uses CloudWatch alarms basically to do it, and it adjusts the provision capacity up and down as needing. And autoscaling is now on by default for all new tables that you create. Then it can also be enabled on existing instances that you've had running for years that didn't have, before that ability was there. And that way, even when you're not there to look at it and make sure it's doing, DynamoDB use autoscaling to monitor the tables and indexes and automatically adjust all the throughput as your traffic changes to get you that cost optimization in there, as well as the ability to scale up and meet your users.
Got it. Next question, I'm gonna start it with Doug, but then I'd like to get Rakesh and JT's take on it too. So, just last week it was a very successful reInvent. AWS made an amazing number of announcements actually, and of all different partner programs, new products, new ways of doing things, just a bunch of stuff. Did you have any favorite or maybe something that related to today's topics that you wanted to share?
Yeah, and oh boy, did we released a ton of stuff as always this year. I mean, nothing as fun and climactic as driving the snowball or snow machine out on the stage like we did last year. But with this year, we had, my personal favorite, and JT hit it on a couple of times, is actually the global VPC peering, which allows for, especially when we're jumping into big things with data lakes and stuff, customers being able to connect to that and use those resources as if they were local resources from different regions. Using the VPC peering globally is the great thing that I've been waiting for years myself, and more directly applicable to the situation would be the global tables within DynamoDB. So if you're using DynamoDB to back all the NoSQL that you're using in a large-scale website that's used across multiple regions, instead of having to worry about things like multi-region replication and making sure that things are synced up in between, being able to have that global table there and just access it from any region and not worry about how you're handling that is a huge win for our customers, and I think it's going to be one of our best features that the customers are using.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, Doug. I think that's going to be very useful, especially for customers like Ndimensional, where we are going to have multiple regions of the infrastructure. My personal favorite, in addition to the VPC pairing, is the guard duty service that you guys announced. I think it's an amazing service. When I started as a sysadmin about 10 years ago, the infrastructure was much smaller. There were only a couple people making changes. We didn't have microservices and all that. Now the infrastructure continues to become very, very hard, and it's just very hard to get a handle of what's going on in your infrastructure. And I think guard duty kind of makes that easy, where you can see all the anomaly and across all your different applications. And we've been playing around with it at NClouds for last week, and I think it's an amazing service, and we see that especially for security is going to be one of our offerings that we're going to turn on for all our customers, because it makes our life easier. And Rakesh, I know you're excited about the DynamoDB global tables, right?
Oh yeah. As we are moving to this hybrid architecture where we're going to have multiple clouds at different geographic locations, there's a lot of information that needs to be shared across these things, and the global tables are really exciting. I think we're definitely going to explore that and make part of the infrastructure.
Excellent. Hey, got another question here for JP, if you don't mind, and then again from Brian. JT, is the dual VPC with VPN preferable to remote desktop gateway when all you need is remote desktop to servers?
So we use OpenVPN to provide access to like the DevOps and engineers, and it also when we go through like PCI or HIPAA audits, we turn on the MFA on OpenVPN, and we actually use the commercial version of OpenVPN, which has the extra bells and whistles of extra layers of security. And it actually, you know, when I used to build infrastructure, we used to build these the OpenVPN profiles manually. It took, you know, very long time. Now with OpenVPN, the paid solution is only like $10 a year or something. You can just point them to a URL, and the client could download the profile, and you can authorize them, and they can add their MFA, and voila, they can now connect to your infrastructure. So, you know, we leverage OpenVPN with MFA, and the administration of that is very easy.
Okay. Next question. This goes to Rakesh and JT. As you were able to scale infrastructure, were you able to scale your process as well? If so, how? Do you use idle, for instance? JT or Rakesh, either one? You want to take a first shot?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and Rakesh could chime in. So, you know, there's a lot of confusion on like how people implement DevOps. Everyone says, hey, everyone should be on PagerDuty, all the developers. But in some cases, you know, it's very hard to do because until the infrastructure is stabilized, until it matures, putting everyone on call will actually make matters worse. So, you know, all the processes side, we at NClouds, we have a dedicated on-call team, and we work very hard with them to like make sure we are reducing repetitive alerts. So, you know, that obviously helps ND, and they can focus on reducing alerts and reducing the repetitive issues. So that's one way we implement processes. We also have an offering that we built. It's called nops.io, which implements change management at the speed of the DevOps, which is something we stole from ITIL and converted into more of a DevOps DevOps type of approach for change management. So that helps us to make sure that we track every change back to a user story, and especially when in the cloud environment where there's so many changes happening, it's very hard to know who's doing what. So at NClouds, we develop tools and processes to make sure, you know, we continue to scale as our customer scales.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point that you made. I think as we touch base during the presentation as well, NClouds team was able to, you know, compile us any issues that we might hit. So as we scale up and down, we understood the bottlenecks, and our engineering team is able to focus on those bottlenecks and able to deliver and make them more stable. And as we made them more stable over the period of time, they tend to get you don't have to really spend as much time on the process anymore, particularly maintaining that part of the infrastructure. But again, there's a part of it that is reactive, as we said, and there's also most of the part is automated. So there's really not a lot of change as you scale up and down resources. For example, the compute instances can scale to any number of cores without actually changing the process involved in it, per se.
Got it. Okay. This is a part two to an earlier question. Can you give an example of a use case scenario where VPC peering is applicable and enables a new, better solution?
It's just following best practices when you're building the infrastructure. So you want to make sure that you create different separate VPCs for your production environment, so that way you have the control of that environment, and only production could talk to production. And then let's say you build a utility VPC where you put your Jenkins, or maybe you put your monitoring agent if you're using Nagios or Icinga. Then you pair them together, and then you allow in the production, only the traffic from the Icinga node or Nagios node, or if you have some task that you use to in your Jenkins pipeline that you wanted to speak Jenkins to talk to production environment, you will create that those routes. So it just gives you a much granular control, and this is one of the things we see over and over, especially with the customers who just get started on AWS and they don't have a lot of knowledge about it. They will put everything in one VPC, and it just becomes very hard to maintain, and especially if you're going through audits like PCI compliance or SOC audit, they will require you to have this kind of segregation. And so VPC pairing is the best way to do it, where you keep the environment separate, but when you pair them, you can allow only a certain amount of traffic or a certain type of traffic from one VPC to another.
Excellent. All right. I think I got another one here for JT. JT, as a consultant builder, does NClouds have a preference for Terraform or CloudFormation?
Honestly, we don't. We leverage whatever the tool we think is more appropriate for the job. At Ndimensional, there were already some code for CloudFormation, so we just extended on that. We do a lot of work around with HashiCorp and Terraform. So we honestly, like to leverage both of these tools. For small teams, CloudFormation works really well. And Terraform, obviously, there's huge momentum. There's a big community so there's a lot of skill set around that. So both of these tools work really well. But there's some times where people try to use wrong tool for the wrong job. For example, they'll try to write Chef to provision infrastructure. I mean, you could do all that, or they'll write Ansible scripts to build the infrastructure, or just Python scripts to build the infrastructure. We feel like that's really, really hard to maintain in the long run. So as long as we're using Terraform or CloudFormation, I feel pretty happy, and it's most of the time it's easier to maintain for our customer.
Great. JP, you mentioned 24/7 support for NClouds. So if you already have an existing DevOps team, does that include on-call support even if there is an existing DevOps team?
Yeah, so it depends. Sometimes depending on what stage you are at your company. Like, let's say you're building out the infrastructure and there are way too many alerts, and you need someone to maintain the runbook, and you want someone to take care of the first level alerts. And we do that really well. And in addition, we work with their team to make sure all these repetitive alerts are reduced by following best practices. So, answer to your question, we actually work really well either way. If there's an existing DevOps team, that's good. We work with their team. We become extension of that team. We'll be on your Slack and HipChat and be part of your Jira. Or if you don't have team, there are many companies like Ndimensional where we are their DevOps team, and we work very closely to make sure they're successful. And taking care of on-call, I feel like that's one of the big things where you can take a lot of the load off from the company, where they can just focus on developing and releasing new features. And once the infrastructure stabilizes, on-call does get much better. But sometimes when the number of alerts you're getting because you're experiencing growth, it could kind of hinder you because you're just always solving these issues and don't have time to work on new features.
Excellent. So we got another one here, I think. What is best option for security? Is it network ACLs or security groups?
Doug, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so a lot of it kind of depends on what you're doing. What we would say is the default scalable, easiest to manage side of it is going to be the security groups, and that's kind of the primary front way in and front wall to everything of having instances come up, they automatically, you attach them to a security group. That security group allows the access to that type of instance needs, that allows access to other security groups. And where the network ACLs come in is more of an advanced option for those that really need to have that secondary layer, or a network security team that wants to be able to go, hey, we have these rules, these policies, we're having an overriding setting that nobody else can touch. IAM permissions are set up so ops teams can't modify network ACLs, only the network security team. And that way there's a check and a balance to it as well, where if it's enabled in a security group but disabled in a network ACL, the traffic doesn't get allowed, and that team would have to go talk with the network security team, make sure that it's allowed, and get that NACL changed. So I mean, in some ways they're complementary. Really wouldn't put one over the other, but when it comes to your general design and building and scaling and deployment, security groups are going to be your primary focus.
Excellent. Okay, guys, I think there was a lot of questions there, huh? But I think we've got through them. I'm going to let it go once, twice, 3 times before we wrap it up. All right, let's move to wrap. We're just about at the top of the hour anyway. First of all, Rakesh Chelasani, Ndimensional, thanks so much for making your first appearance on a DevOps.com webinar today. Hope to see you back soon, and continued success with Ndimensional. Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Doug, JT, all right, you got 2 under your belts now. We have a 3rd one coming up. We'll probably take off for the holiday and come back here towards the end of February for the 3rd, but that gives you plenty of time to, cook up another great webinar here in this series. So, guys, thanks so much for coming in and sharing today. I know these webinars, for people out there, there's a lot that goes into it on the back end. So thanks to both of you and your teams behind you for putting this on. Great webinar, guys. Thank you. To our audience, thank you very much. Hope to see you soon on another DevOps.com webinar. Until then, though, this is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com. Have a great day, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you.